Hello, this is Marie Steffenson. Thanks for joining me as I'm exploring and talking through different watercolor palettes. And we have just gone through historically the different palettes that I've used, my landscape palette that I used in Oklahoma, the new gouache palette that I've been exploring with. The container itself is a no-name brand, but the product inside is the Daniel Smith watercolors. And then we also have just explored my regular Daniel Smith palette and my figure drawing palette. What we're gonna do today at this time, is start a new palette. I had a student ask me, he didn't even know how to put the paint into the palette. So what we are going to do is work on a figure drawing palette. Previously, I have focused on granulation, and this one's really good with that. It has the nice deep wells for the large paintbrushes when I'm doing figure drawing. For the large paintings, I have the goethite that's granule. Goethite, genuine, nope, it's not genuine. Goethite. Brown ochre. It doesn't have the genuine name on it, but it granulates. It's pigment yellow 43. This is one of my favorite pigment index numbers, pigment yellow 43. It's the natural from the earth product. Granulating, Daniel Smith, Sodalite genuine, highly granulating. Then I have my garnet genuine, which is transparent. And you can see I have a dollop in there of the transparent pyro orange, but I'm not going to keep replacing that. And then over here I have the Monte Amiata, which is not granulating, pigment brown 7, which is related to pigment 43, similar behavior, part of why I like it. But pigment brown 7 is interesting because it goes from the full range from Monte Amiata, which is a light yellow, all the way to brown umber, which is pigment brown 7 also, which is very dark value. And I love how it behaves. So I have two of the pigment brown 7 in my palette. Pigment yellow 43 I also love. All right, we could go forever on that. I love color. This was my granulating palette, and now I'm going to step away from my granulating palette and do something very, very different. What I have here is a pill case that is developed. Okay, I moved to Italy, and apparently they have a tabacchiere. Yes, you can make fun of my accent. And they sell historically taxed items from the government, which is salt, tobacco, and now gambling stuff. I'm not sure about all that. And it's also where you can go to get photocopies and bus tickets and all these things. I saw right when I moved in that there was a small pill case here. Pushes the button, opens it up. And what I saw was not a pill case, but a future watercolor palette. So we're gonna work on this together and set up a palette. Now, the strategy with this palette is to do something opposite from my figure drawing palette. Here I have transparent with granulation and very deep wells that I can use for covering large swaths of paper for the large paintings and portraits. What I have in my right hand is the pill container that I would like to use for on the bus and as I'm around town for portraits. And what I'm looking for is transparency. So I'm gonna start with taking my sticker. Nope, that sticker's a little bit too big. I think I'm gonna do off camera of putting this sticker on here, but I need to trim up the edge. So for transparency, I love bells. It's noon here, and those are the noon bells. All right. For blue transparents, I have a lot of good options. I have lapis lazuli genuine, I have ultramarine blue, and I have phthalo. So with my portrait drawing, I have very muted, desaturated colors. And I think for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do stronger, brighter colors. So that would be my phthalo blue. That is the largest, but I'm not going to put that in immediately because I don't want it to cross the color with any others. I'm also going to choose the brightest, no, the strongest yellow. So the brightest yellow that I have is Hansa Yellow Light. It's the brightest. However, it is semi-transparent, and you can read this off the dot card and also off the online information, etc. But I want this to be purely transparent, so that I don't want a semi-transparent in there. I'll consider it maybe in the future, but I want it purely transparent. So I have here Nickel Azo Yellow, which also chromatically is a stronger paint and holds its own a little stronger when it's in relationship with the other colors. And then for the red, what I'm choosing, I'm debating between this. This is a hard one. I have the goethite. No, I have the garnet, which is completely transparent, which I love, but I've been using that for my figure drawing for a long time. I have transparent pyrrole orange, again, completely transparent, nice and strong and bright. Then I have my Quin Coral right here and my Rhodonite Genuine. All of these are completely transparent. I love them all. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for something bright. And I think I'm going to choose the transparent pyrrole orange because it is the strongest pigment for holding its own in the community of pigments that I have. So out of the dot card, the thought process that I'm going through with this, I've done thousands of color swatches. We should find those. Give me a moment. Go, we got them. All right, I've done thousands of color swatches. These are the most recent ones. And okay. So I know, because I have done thousands of color swatches, is that I know how my paints behave. I know how they interact with each other here. So I can sit here with confidence and know which ones are transparent, how they're going to behave with each other. So I know that I have explored the transparent pyrrole orange. Have it explored over here, and here, and here, and here. And I know I've explored the Nickel Azo Yellow, exploring here, and all over here. And the transparent, what's the other one? Phthalo Blue, exploring throughout here. Here I have a more granulating, desaturated sheet. And then here again, I have the bright colors with the phthalos involved. Okay, so what I'm telling you, the point of what I'm sharing with you is that you know your colors. Having more pigments is not necessary. It is actually a detriment when you're beginning. When you're beginning, start simple. Start with the triads. I have a good colleague, Raffaele, who talks about the triads and working with triads, and it helps your work mature quicker and for you to learn the skills for watercolor well and quickly. So I can tell you, I've already explored the colors. These are just the most recent of thousands of swatches that I've done. What I found is that doing swatches is very relaxing and grounding and brings me joy. And it's a great way for me to spend my downtime. I'm trying to have less screen time. This is a great way to do something different. And then I also like old school writing letters, so then I can take the paper, I can cut it and use it as stationery, and it makes the most beautiful original stationery also. So you're never wasting product, you're never wasting time, you're never wasting material. You can keep repurposing it and using what you have. So once again, here we have the palette. I have my triad, and the colors that I have are completely transparent. They are bright and they are highly saturated. So this is looking towards more, quote, traditional watercolor. And what that quote means is it actually means historically British watercolor. So the other brands, some historically British watercolor brands, focus only on transparency, and they actually try to push the product to be more transparent. For me as a watercolorist and working in the American tradition and heritage and in the Renaissance of watercolor, I'm exploring the granulation. Let's get some good example of granulation here. Beautiful. I'm exploring the granulation of the product, and I'm exploring the blossoms, the watercolor cauliflowers, blossoms. I love this. This is something that's not in any other product. You can manipulate oil. Helen Frankenthaler worked a little bit with oil to try to get the blossoms. Yeah. So I get to keep working, keep standing on the shoulders of giants. Let's lay out the palette. Opening up the Nickel Azo Yellow. And I have the palette here. In the lid, I'm planning on using this as the area to mix the watercolor. Okay, and now, since I know I'm planning on mixing the watercolor here, I'm actually gonna put my yellow as far from that as possible so that if I carry a red or a blue over the well of yellow, that it will not cross-contaminate it. Now, as I lay out the palette, I am actually trying to put it on the lip of the palette here. And I could start with a very small amount. That's the size of a large lentil. It's really small. But I know I like working more quantity than that. I had a classmate that I recently came in contact with again, who's still a watercolorist also. A classmate in college, and she would use very, very small quantity of watercolor, and her paintings were much more pastel. But for me, I like having more power, oomph, in Italian, potenza, in my pigments. So this is the yellow. I actually have not too much of it close to the ground, but let's see if gravity can keep it that way. And again, you want to keep the threads of your watercolors as clean as possible so that you always have a good seal and the pigments stay soft. There we go. That's my Nickel Azo Yellow. Opening up my transparent orange. And now note here, I do not want to put the transparent orange directly on this corner right here, because make sure that's still in screen. Okay. Do not want to put it directly in the corner here because I don't want it to easily cross-contaminate the yellow. So I'm actually going to put it either in the center. Actually, I'll put it, center and or corner. Okay, so this one is it's being affected by gravity more. It's sinking towards the bottom faster and easier. And you can see I put a volume there of maybe half a teaspoon of pigment in there because I want to be able to use it well. And close that up immediately. And then the last one is Phthalo Blue. So again, I do not want it in this corner where it'll cross-contaminate the yellow, or in this corner. And Phthalo Blue is very dominating color. It can hijack any mix that you use. So you have to be aware of that, but not afraid of it. Excuse me. So notice for the Phthalo Blue, I'm also going to use a lot smaller of a mount for it. This is the size of a pea. For this one also, I'm going to put a second amount in the corner because I want to have the capacity to mix a dark. And to mix a dark in color practice, the answer is 2 complementary colors, each of them with dark values of their own. So the 2 darkest that I have are red and blue. So I'm putting up a red right next to it, right there, which is my transparent pyro. And again, every time you put the tube away, you want to make, every time you don't want to leave the tube open at any time. So for a paintbrush, I'll leave it wet while I'm working and clean it afterwards. But this one you want to close immediately to keep them fresh. So what we have here is yellow, high value, orange, transparent pyro, and a dark mix, which is that green, that blue and red, and blue and Pyro, and then just the clean blue. Now, as I continue to use this, what I will do is mix in the wells so that there can be washes in the wells, and I will let this dry. I am curious to see with this new product how, if we have corrosion, like I had in the other tin that I had previously used several years, you can see that there's corrosion happening with the metal interacting with the chemistry of the paint. So to be very aware of that, because this tin was not created for watercolor paint. This tin was, so this one has better longevity. So now I'm interested to see how this one will do. So here we are setting up the watercolor palette, and I also want gravity to not sink the pigment straight to the bottom because I want to be able to fit a well in there. So as I leave this to dry, I'm actually going to leave it to dry so that gravity helps the paint sink this direction towards the lid. Alrighty, that is setting up a new watercolor palette. Very small, very good beginning. And setting up the watercolor palette for very fast, quick, simple, beautiful color choices, plein air painting. This one will go in my hand so easily for riding on the bus and painting. I hope this was great for you. Thanks for spending the time with me, and wishing you all joy in your watercolor journey. Thanks.